How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I'm going to be discussing how to get your electrolytes on point, especially if you're following any sort of low carb or ketogenic diet. So I've been doing a ketogenic diet for almost 2 years now. As a matter of fact, starting November 28th, December 1st, it's going to be 2 years of low carb slash ketogenic dieting, and also at the same time training intensely 6 days a week, not only in powerlifting, but also in full contact martial arts. Guys, remember, small progress over time, little steps every day, consistently equals big success, big results. All right, guys, so how to get your electrolytes on point. So there are a lot of people out there who believe that you shouldn't need salt, you shouldn't need supplements if you're on a ketogenic or carnivore diet because, there were no supplements in the jungle, human beings didn't evolve to eat salt, all this nonsense. Well, look, the fact of the matter is human beings have always had a high salt intake, whether that was from eating sea animals, because human beings evolved close to the sea, or whether that was consuming soil or salt licks or drinking the blood of the animals that they kill freshly. Human beings have always consumed a minimum of 2 grams of sodium on a regular basis. And that's why sodium's actually, we have a minimum daily requirement for sodium. If you want more information on that, read the book The Salt Fix by Dr. James D. Nicolantonio. I'll be posting a series of studies on the negative impact of sodium, of eating less sodium, the negative impact of not eating enough sodium in low salt diets, and some of the studies done showing why you should be consuming about a teaspoon of salt a day. I'll be posting that on my Instagram soon. Until then, let's get started with the video. So, the most important thing that you can add to get your electrolytes on point is salt. So this Himalayan pink salt, this is about 3.5 pounds. I got this for $5 at Ross. I have probably 15 pounds of salt at my house. I have Himalayan salt, Redmond's real salt. I have Celtic sea salt, okay? I have a video that talks about the differences of those. Look for that by searching up my channel name and salt, and you'll find the video. So essentially, you need to be consuming at least a half teaspoon of measured out added salt a day, but a half a teaspoon is really nothing compared to what you really should be getting on a low carb diet. If you're on a ketogenic diet, throughout the day, you should be getting a minimum intake of 1 teaspoon of salt, or the equivalent of 2 grams of sodium. So most people, they feel like crap on low carb diets for 2 reasons. The first one is that it requires about 4 weeks to fully adapt to burning ketones as fuel. And until then, you're gonna have carb withdrawals. And your body's gonna be feeling low on energy because it's shifting its entire metabolism over to burning fat as fuel, converting body fat into glucose and glycogen, and converting body fat into ketones to fuel your brain, and then absorbing those as energy. That's the first reason. The second reason is because most people, they don't get enough salt. People, they just think that they can sprinkle their salt on their food liberally and that will be enough. But the fact is, the keto flu, headaches, cramping, all that stuff is caused by not enough salt, first and foremost. Salt is actually what causes your body to retain all of the rest of the minerals. You can drink all the water you want, but if you don't consume the minimum requirement for sodium, your body's just going to piss out all that water that you're drinking. And so, a lot of people, they force themselves, they force water down their throat all day. Like, in fact, I actually had a client who, I've had a number of clients who they bring Gatorade or Kool-Aid with them, basically. And I asked them, why are you drinking that sugar water? And they say, well, because I'm generally not thirsty. And in order for me to get the recommended daily intake of water per day, I've got to drink this flavored water. And I say, well, listen, if you're not thirsty, that means you don't need water. And so people are forcing water down their throats because they think that it's healthy. And what happens is you end up with too much water and not enough salt. And you can get the symptoms of hyponatremia without it showing up on a blood test. Okay, that's very important. So 1 teaspoon of salt per day minimum on a low carb diet. And people who are eating a relatively moderate amount of carbohydrates could probably get away with about a half a teaspoon of added salt a day. But ideally, a teaspoon a day is probably best for most people. And then if you start to have the symptoms of low sodium, you can bump your intake up to about 2 teaspoons, maybe 3 teaspoons on the most the highest end. Some people actually have noticed that they feel best when they get approximately 2 tablespoons worth of salt a day. It's about 15 grams of sodium, give or take. Probably not. I'm probably off. But anyway, so there's that. Next thing. So when I'm, going long-term ketosis, I generally take 2 teaspoons of salt. Next thing, magnesium citrate. So a lot of people, they claim that this one gives them diarrhea, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is, I found magnesium citrate to actually be the most, like the best form of magnesium, specifically in a caplet or in a powdered form, to where you don't get the disaster pants symptoms that a lot of magnesium will give you. If you drink liquid magnesium citrate, then you're probably going to shit your pants. But approximately 400 milligrams of magnesium citrate is probably not a bad idea. I buy the pure powder. This is only about $10 from Amazon, and it has enough servings to last about 3 months. So this is my primary magnesium source, but I typically will take about a half a teaspoon of this magnesium, and then I'll mix it with a half a teaspoon of ionic magnesium. This is magnesium carbonate, but it also includes citric acid in the formula and sodium bicarbonate. And when you mix this magnesium in water, it becomes ionic magnesium. Okay? Essentially, it's a special form of magnesium citrate that's created from a biochemical reaction when you mix it in the water. So I'll do about a half a teaspoon of this, which is approximately 175 milligrams, about 150 milligrams. Yeah, 175 milligrams. And then a half teaspoon of this, which is about 200 milligrams. So I get about 400 milligrams of magnesium from those two. And some nights, if I feel like I need, I don't know, more relaxation, if I've had a hard training week or something, and I need to de-stress, I might add about 400 milligrams of a mixed magnesium chelate, which is it's an amino acid mixed with combined with magnesium, and there's a variety of different forms in that formula. But these are the basic magnesium forms I would recommend. Then I also feel like it's extremely important to get a calcium source other than dairy in your diet. A lot of people are scared of calcium. They think that hunter-gatherers never really got calcium in their diet and blah, blah, blah. Fact of the matter is humans have been eating bones probably longer than they've been eating meat. In fact, the best evidence we have as far as when human beings started eating meat, we were scavengers. We used to crack open the skulls of other carnivores' dead kills, and typically we'd get a lot of bone fragments in with the brains and bone marrow that we'd be consuming. But nonetheless, studies on hunter-gatherer tribes find that they do actually crush bones and consume them. And also you would typically be getting a lot more calcium in the blood of the animals, which is traditionally drank from hunter-gatherer tribes. And the fact is, if you do not consume adequate calcium, at minimum 500 milligrams a day, which is drastically lower than the RDI, then you're setting yourself up for high risk of dental cavities, of dental calculus, and of osteoporosis growing older. And it is a fact that high protein intake, specifically animal protein, increases the absorption of calcium while also increasing the excretion of calcium in the urine. But even if you have a higher absorption of calcium, it's not going to matter, considering meat and vegetables typically only contain about 50 milligrams of calcium per pound. The other thing is that plants, like broccoli, might be a highly absorbable source of calcium, or so they say. But the amount of calcium you'd from broccoli and other plants that are high in calcium, you'd have to eat a ton of those plants. And most people actually have trouble digesting those things. If you're on a low carb diet, you're probably not eating a lot of plant source of calcium anyway. Nonetheless, I think bone shells, if you roast them to sterilize them, and then you crush them using a coffee grinder or bone meal, I think is the best source. There's some concerns about lead and bone meal. I personally don't care. I don't really care at all. I don't believe that and I've seen some analysis of this bone meal powder. I don't believe there's any lead in here. Nonetheless, I don't really care. This is vitally important because you get trace minerals too, like boron. You get strontium, and phosphorus. So I think this is a must for not only for feeling good. I notice a mood balancing effect when I take this. I notice deeper sleep, but also I notice my teeth feel stronger, and I do know for a fact if you do not get adequate calcium, you set yourself up for all sorts of problems. Most people, no matter what diet they're consuming, even keto and carnivore people, they don't have a decent source of calcium other than dairy a lot of times. And dairy is okay if you can tolerate it. So, potassium, there's a lot of controversy as to if you should be consuming potassium or not. Well, if you are taking in extra magnesium, I think it's vitally important to also get more potassium. I've actually found that the people who supplement magnesium without sodium and potassium are the ones who generally run into a lot of problems. And so if you bump up your sodium and magnesium intake, um, you might find that you need to also pump up your potassium intake. It's a delicate balance. I forgot to mention, I'll do about a teaspoon and a half of bone meal powder a day is what I try to strive for. It's approximately 1,200 milligrams of calcium. For my potassium intake, I don't really supplement potassium very often. And these days, I don't really supplement magnesium very often either. I mostly just do salt and bone meal powder. But especially if I'm in a very strict ketogenic protocol and I'm sweating vigorously, I'll do about 1/4 of a teaspoon of this new salt, which is approximately 650 milligrams of potassium. And I'll mix that post workout with about 400 milligrams of my magnesium powders mixed up, about a half a teaspoon of calcium, and I'll do a half a teaspoon of salt to about 1 teaspoon of salt after my workouts. But overall, throughout the whole day, I get 400 milligrams of magnesium. I get 1,200 milligrams of my calcium from my bone meal. I get probably about, I don't know, if I do supplement potassium, it's about 700 milligrams. And then I also will supplement with kelp. So I do kelp because it's a very concentrated source of iodine. A lot of people, we don't really consume much iodine. Iodine is, from what I've seen, pretty scarce in our food supply and in our soil now. Foods like potatoes that some data will claim is high in iodine might not actually contain as much iodine. It all depends on the soil and where it's grown. Unless you're consuming a lot of seafood, you're probably not going to get a reliable source of iodine. And I think that it's one thing that's very low in the regular diet. So I don't really care too much about people's concerns about kelp and things like, what is it, PCBs and things of that nature, pollutants. I think you're better off getting kelp in than not getting it at all. So I do about 1/4 of a teaspoon of kelp a day minimum, but I might consume it multiple times a day. The trace minerals are also a good benefit, chlorophyll and a variety of other things you find in kelp. It's just a really good thing to have. Um, and also certain salts like Redmond's real salt, actually, from what I've seen, might contain approximately 100 milligrams or 100 micrograms of iodine per like 1/2 of a teaspoon or something. So you should be getting a decent amount of iodine from the Redmond's real salt as well. With that being said, oh, and I forgot to mention, so I mean, again, on my salt intake, it can vary. I go by feel more so these days. Some days I'll do a half a teaspoon if I do eat like some carbs, like if I'm doing an experiment or something where I up my carb intake to, see its effects on my, exercise performance, which doesn't happen as much these days. Um, but if I do eat some carbs or something or have a cheat meal, I might do a half a teaspoon of salt because carbs increase water retention and mineral retention, so you need less salt because you retain more salt with more carbs. But on my really low carb days, I get probably about a teaspoon minimum a day. So 2 grams of sodium a day, which equates to about 4 or 5 grams of salt. So that's a teaspoon a day. So yeah, I mean, get your minerals in, get your salt, get your water in. And as far as what I recommend, I mean, pretty much all of the supplements I mentioned here are what I would recommend people work with, but start slowly with the potassium. This can cause people problems until they're adapted to it. And if you have blood pressure medications or blood sugar medications and things like that, you should probably talk to your doctor first because that are on medications and have kidney problems, heart failure, diabetes, and things tend to have trouble with this. It can build up in the system and cause some pretty severe problems. You do not want potassium overload. But if you're regularly healthy, don't have any health problems, or not on medications, still start slowly. But you should probably be able to consume this just fine. Your kidneys will just excrete any excess. But I start with about 1/8 of a teaspoon, 1/8 of a teaspoon of potassium per day, and then build up. It's about 1/4 of a teaspoon, but spread throughout the day. And maybe a half a teaspoon spread throughout the day is probably the most I do of the potassium salt. And the magnesium, you might want to try magnesium glycinate if you have like disaster pants from taking magnesium citrate. Magnesium carbonate powders, like the magnesium calm and whatnot, is basically the same thing as what's in here. The only thing is it's not as bioavailable as magnesium citrate, but it's generally a lot easier on the stomach and provides more of a calming effect. So you'll find a lot of different magnesium supplements on the market. Magnesium taurate, which is really good for neurological health. It can be used as a nootropic of sorts. What else? Magnesium. Um, so there's a wide variety of magnesiums, but I like to stick to the basic magnesium citrate. It's been working for me forever. In fact, one of my most viral videos has over 50, probably about 100,000 views now. And it's made me over $100. Made that video back in 2013. It's one of my most viral videos, and it's on magnesium citrate and how, it cured my anxiety and all this stuff way back in the day. Anyway, leave your question and comments down below. Let me know, what is your electrolyte stack? What is your mineral stack? And what's your opinion on these minerals? Small steps over time equals big results, guys, even though it's like backwards. Whatever. Talk to you guys next time.